Oh, we're good? Okay. We got the standard forms, so if you haven't signed in or picked up an evaluation form, you can do that at the break. But we have next Tuesday, this is going to be really, really neat. We're having a field trip to the Magical Bridge Playground. And to get there, we're going to carpool, but not a carpool like this or this. We're actually going to have you guys help us drive there. So I have a sign-up sheet for drivers. So I passed that around first. So if you can carpool with other people, write down your name and stuff. And then on Thursday, I'll have the passenger sign-up list. So you sign up with somebody who's going to carpool. And that way we'll all get there. So I'll just pass this around. So this, again, is for drivers. If you're a passenger, wait until Thursday, okay? So that's what the sign-up sheet is. So we want your name, cell phone, which, and this includes community members as well. So if you want to go to the Magical Bridge Playground and volunteer to drive people, that would be great. So we'll have all this filled out and have the passenger sign up on Thursday. It's going to be a fun time. We've been there 3 times before, and our host will be Olenka Villarreal, and we get to see all this fun stuff, and you get to check it out. But I think what's going to happen is you're all going to turn into kids again. So that's okay too. On Thursday, Peter Axelson will be here. He's a colleague of mine. He's a graduate of Stanford. He's an engineer. So he gives a great talk on all the things that he and his company have done over the years. And then after the class session, we usually have a dinner over at Max's. So I can't pay for everybody. I can pay for Peter. But if you want to come and be a part of that, if you want to hang out with Peter and ask him a few more questions, that would be great. I'm going to take a show of hands on who's going to attend Thursday it'll be right after the lecture. Okay? Today we have Sha Yao, but before that, I'm going to talk about our next discussion topic. I decided to skip a few and go to accessibility. Who knows what accessibility is? Oh, good. I get to tell everybody. So this is my view of it, okay? I mean, other people have other views, but this is how I perceive it. So accessibility is a design concept, a design specification, design consideration, a design goal, a product feature. So it's a part of a product or a building or software or something like that. That enables people with disabilities, with all sorts of, any kind of disability, or older adults or kids, or basically everyone, to better interact through sight, sound, touch, smell, mobility, all the ways that we interact with the world, with other people, with structures, the infrastructure, transportation systems, buildings, ramps, products like computers, like the internet, like websites, with the way we live in our house, and on the job as well. And that's done by having a different way of interacting with the world, which could be an alternate way, that instead of doing it the traditional way, maybe there's another way that a person with a disability might find easier. If a person has a limited ability, maybe we can magnify that ability in some way to make it easy for them to interact with the world. Sometimes a customized solution is appropriate, so you build something for them, a one-of-a-kind solution. But everybody has preferences. I mean, even I have preferences on like the font I want to use, the background color of things. So everybody has preferences, and that sort of counts as accessibility. Having access to those options is important. For the purposes of education, work, recreation, daily living. Little things do make a difference. So if you do, it doesn't take much in a lot of cases to provide accessibility to make your product or website easier for people to use. So the ultimate goal of accessibility is to provide an equal opportunity to participate in society. As you remember, that was one of the definitions of disability, the ability to participate, as a person in society, to fully engage in the activities that interest us. So that's just what accessibility does. And now for lots of examples. I'm sure you've seen all these. Access to buildings, which include ramps, automatic doors, braille signage, desktops that raise and lower. There's some ATMs where you can plug in earphone, and instead of looking at the screen, you can hear what's going on. This is an accessible van with a lift that gives person access to transportation. Okay. Big part of accessibility is computer accessibility. And there are things like audio description and screen reading or magnified screens so that you can see things bigger or have an audio description of what's going to be on a screen. There are programs called screen readers that actually go in and will read everything that's on your display. And blind folks work like that. Okay. This is a Braille output device. It's about 24 characters worth of Braille. So instead of displaying that on the screen, it's displayed in Braille, and the user would just run their hand across the top of those buttons and feel the Braille and understand the letters that they represent. For people with hearing difficulties, there's captioning. Captioning also helps if you're in a noisy bar and watching TV. So it helps everybody. There's a real-time captioning. Also your phone, instead of beeping at you, can have a message that pops up. These are all things that help people with hearing impairments. There's lots of adaptive keyboards and mice. There's speech recognition for input. There's this big mouse ball. There's a one-handed mouse. There's a foot mouse. There's all sorts of different keyboard designs that are out there that can help you get information into the computer. Getting information out. This is a computer that it has voice output. So instead of typing things in, you'd press a button here, and if you're not if you're nonverbal, you can speak this way by hitting the buttons, forming sentences out of those key presses. In smartphones, and they have a text-to-speech output. So instead of seeing things on the screen, it's spoken to you, and that's pretty much a part of every smartphone. So that helps folks who are blind. Some other pictures. There's a better picture of a Braille display. If you have problems with dexterity, you can use one of these keyboard sticks to press the keys. There's another mouse ball arrangement. They have software that will magnify just a part of the screen, so you can pretty much use any program and have this as an app that will magnify a screen so you can see it. There are different keyboards that are high contrast keys. There's captioning for TV shows as well. So all that stuff counts as access. Accessible web pages are really important because that's how we get a lot of our information. So you want to have those available for everybody. There's lots of different guidelines here. I'm not sure I'll go through all of them, but there are standards for accessibility for all disabilities, including cognitive disabilities. And there's even software that helps you make accessible web pages. There's other software that will help you identify any access shortcomings on your web pages. There's even a company that will redirect your web pages through their system, so in real time it will add in accessibility features that you might have forgotten to put in. So all these things are all about accessibility. Okay, lots of different stuff. So that's the short version of accessibility. This is a really deep issue because it involves how we get information in employment and stuff like that. Tony has a question.
Actually, just a comment.
Yeah.
There is actual agencies that will come in and audit your website
Right.
app, make sure it's wheelchair accessible,
Yeah.
make sure it's accessible for disabled people,
Yeah.
who have a hard time reading and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's a pain
Yeah.
to deal with. Like, it's a full-on, you could go through code with them.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
something. I've done it.
Yeah, there are places where you can just send a web page and it will tell you
Right.
how to improve it.
Big companies.
Yeah,
Like, when you
right.
get like the Facebook size and things like that, that actual agency will come in and audit you.
Right.
And audit your site. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, not everybody has to do that.
Right.
Rachel?
One really brief question and then another.
Okay.
One is, I maybe should know this, but with the guidelines that were on the screen,
Yeah.
it's WCAG.
Yeah.
What does it stand for? Is it responsible?
W3C?
No, above that, it says
Oh, this is a committee of the W3C. This is the World Wide Web Consortium, and they do these guidelines, and so this is accessibility group, I believe. Okay, so, but you can look them up. They have all this stuff written down, what the guidelines are, how best to achieve them, and it's just really deep stuff. And they've been doing it for over 10 years now. Okay.
other question is border.
Sorry?
Other question that I have is border. I'm not from the US, so this is partly why I'm asking this question.
Okay.
How does regulation mandate or obligate people to provide accessibility? And I guess I'm particularly interested in, say, accessibility in relation to computers and software, where things are constantly changing at all.
Right. Well, I'm not sure how much of it you have to do, how much is mandated, how much is the law. I don't think there's a law that you're not going to go to jail if you have a web page that isn't accessible. But it's guidelines now, and certainly if you're with a federal organization, you want to be compliant.
And in terms of physical access, so for instance, providing ramps to a building,
Right.
is there particular legislation that...
Yeah, there are building codes that include accessibility.
Okay, but there's not like a specific law, like there's not like
I don't know for sure, but certainly there's been a lot of buildings built and they have plans for accessible bathrooms, and they have plans for where the call button on the elevator is, how high the sink should be, how high the buttons to open the doors are. So people have thought through all this, so it's easy to get to. Okay, and yeah, I'm sure there's access regarding like accessible buildings. Stanford has a whole set of pages on access to all the buildings. Yeah.
Just on that point about discrimination based on accessibility stuff like that, I think there is actually some legal basis for it, because
Right.
My grandfather's a lawyer and he's done a case before to grant accessibility to buildings before based on
Right. Yeah. So I mean, the key words here are reasonable accommodation. So you can argue exactly what that means and when it isn't reasonable and stuff like that. So they did that on purpose to make it sort of open, so you deal with situations as they arise. But there are certain standards now in buildings, and there's certainly a lot of consultants that work with people with disabilities to come up with an accommodation for them to work in a company, for example. And those all have to be sort of like custom done, you know. How do you interact with the phone system, stuff like that. And companies, if they want to sell to the government, their products have to be accessible as well, or be made accessible. So maybe a computer, when you get it, isn't accessible, but there's things you can plug into it to make it accessible. So that counts. Okay. Excellent. So we're going to take a little break, and you know what to do during the break. You can sign the attendance sheet, grab a cookie if you haven't, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Keep it going.
You have new speakers this semester?
Yeah, 2 new speakers, faculty people. One is a fellow who does exoskeleton research that we taught last week, and there's another faculty person who's going to be speaking in a few weeks. But all the rest are the same because they're just so good, and I don't want to take a chance on having it in person just because they're new and but I don't know how.
Yeah, sure. You might stop by sometimes when you have the classes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you're more than welcome. So
I'll just maybe put it here or
Any place.
take it in my hands.
No, don't hold it.
Don't hold it.
Hi. So, don't blow into it.
Okay, so I should flip it here?
Yeah.
The other way.
Microphone on.
Yeah, okay.
I got the doors.
Yes? Yeah. Oh, okay. Can have it here. Then I don't have to use my product.
Okay, this is going to be.
Like this?
Yeah, does that work?
No.
Okay.
It's okay, I'll just use it well. It works in any consequences.
Until, well, that's at 6 o'clock. It's actually 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So you have until 5:50 or 6:50, including questions.
I'll speak it faster.
Yeah, so at the end you can invite people up to take a look at this, and they can come up and ask you questions. And I'm going to start the video from my wireless mouse over there, okay?
Oh, okay. I'll let you know.
Well, it's the third slide, you know.
Yeah,
So you
sure.
can just, okay. Okay, let's get started.
Okay,
It's my pleasure and your pleasure to have Sha Yao here. She describes herself as a passionate industrial designer who likes to challenge herself. She has a background, diverse background, and speaks English, Mandarin, Chinese, and Japanese. But by popular demand, she'll be speaking English today. Right? Okay. All right. She's created a product design studio to help startup companies develop their product ideas, and especially loves to work on projects that help people in need. She's also the winner of the first Stanford Center on Longevity Design Competition Challenge, which she first presented her work. So let's welcome Sha to the class.
Thank you for coming today. My name is Sha Yao, and founder of Sha Design LLC. Today I would like to share my experience of making a design project into market. When I was growing up, both of my parents needed to work, and my grandma took care of me since I was little. And my grandma is my inspiration working on Eat Well. And let's take 2 minutes to see a video of Eat Well.
Next slide. Next slide. Oh, I might have to set this up. Oh, no. Hold on.
And I have the product set, the final product set here, which is selling in the market already. So after the class, you're welcome to have a look. And Eat Well is actually my thesis project from 2010 to 2012. Later on, after the video, I will also share some the design process I use, and maybe it can help someone if they are interested in. Is there anyone here have heard of Eat Well, the product? And I'm glad you're here today. I was inspired by my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. Every time when I saw her suffer, I wish I could have done something to help her to have better quality of life. My name is Sha Yao, and I'm the creator of Eat Well. When my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I began volunteering in adult daycare centers to learn more about this disease. And that's when I realized there were many people who had similar problems as my grandma. They often ate less than they should, and accidents with spilled food and tip cups were common. That's the reason I designed and created Eat Well, which is a very user-centered design that can help to increase food intake, maintain dignity for its users, while also help to alleviate caring burdens by making the process of eating as easy as possible. Eat Well is a universal tableware that actually can be used by anyone, but especially benefits seniors with cognitive impairment, small children, and caregivers of those with special needs. Now I would like to show you what makes Eat Well special. There are over 20 unique features in each Eat Well set. Every design detail and decision can be traced back to a discovery made during the 4-year process. One of the more obvious features of the Eat Well set is its color. Studies have shown that a person with dementia consumes 24% more food and 84% more liquid when using brightly colored tableware. Eat Well applies this concept to stimulate interest in its user while providing a visual contrast. Now let's take a closer look at the design of the tableware. The center button of the bowls allows food to collect on one side, while spoons in the Eat Well set are specially designed to match the curvature of the bowl, making scooping food significantly easier. The bowls also features right angle sides, which help prevent accidental spills. the Eatwell set also contains 2 types of cups. To prevent the cups from tipping over, one cup has a rubber base that acts as a stabilizer, and another cup has a handle that extends to the tabletop for added support. The handle is also specifically designed to benefit users with arthritis. Every product in the Eatwell set has anti-slippage material on the bottom to prevent slipping or sliding. The set also comes with a tray that allows users to clip a bit onto the edge to help catch any dropped food and prevent clothing stains. I put so much work into my research, sketches, mock-ups, and revisions of my model based on the feedback that I received from professional caregivers. After years of research and development, Eatwell won first place at the 2014 Stanford Design Challenge.
I have to show this.
To other teams in 15 countries. I truly believe this product
Okay, you can stop.
the way we see kitchenware, but only with your help. Any contribution you can provide will help.
Just give Peter.
Okay, this some details about the product itself. And first, I would like to share the design process I mentioned. And first, define the problem. I spent time, a lot of time to look around myself and find the topic I'm most interested in and worthest to me to develop. In my case, my grandmother with her illness was something I wanted to work on. And for me, the second step, the research, is the most time-consuming part and the most important part as well. I volunteer in 3 adult daycare centers to know numerous caregivers and the users. So for doing that, I am able to learn from my users and to know more about what kind of challenges they may have during the whole day. Then I will define those problems and I approach to them and ask them what's the most things they care about. And then I decided to focusing on the eating. And the next step is the design and the user testing stage. Once I have done my research and know the problems my users may have, design is relatively easy. For example, my users tip cups very often, so my job is to make a cup not tip over that easily. And I believe you all have been through that, like we will come up like thousands, hundreds of sketches and figure out which one is the best one. And then I work on the final touches, change the structure of my design for the mass production, and check the material limitations and keep my conversation with the end users to determine my final design. So from defining a problem to implementation of solution, my job as an IT student was done. I received a good grades from school and presented in the grade show. And but another challenge was still waiting for me, how to bring a design to market. There are many caregivers I work with keeps asking about when they can get a product. So first step, I come up a business plan. I write it for myself as a reference and also for potential investors. It helps me to clarify a lot of things. How much money I need to create to make Eatwell to the market, and what kind of resources I have, and what was my plan to use it, and what's my marketing, sales, hiring plan in the next 5 years. I might not have all the answers, all the details, but it does help me to think, to generate ideas as a start. Then if I'm not sure about any part of it, I attended events in Bay Area and look for help. I get to learn more about my options and to put those in my business plan. Generally, I ask people around how they develop their business and what kind, and if they can refer me to some contacts. And I went to the hardware meetup to look for manufacturers, and I attended the pitch events to see what the investors cares about the most. And I also participate in some free classes from SBA, which is the U.S. Small Business Administrations. And in my financial plan, a big part of it is to the mass production. So I received several quotes after I contacted more than 10 manufacturers in the US, in China, and Taiwan. And surprisingly, well, my design looked very simple, but I received all different feedbacks from them. And we went over all the challenges we may encounter, and I also have a more deeper understanding about my design. And for example, one of the conversation I had is I realized that the PP plastic material cannot be combined with the silicone material. So, but I don't like the material they suggest me to change since it cannot be microwave. So that's something we have to figure out. And before I talk to any engineering or manufacturers or send over my 3D files, I sign an NDA NDA with them, which stands for non-disclosure agreement. And there are also intellectual property parts we need to take care of. And there are many things we can discuss here since I invest this a lot. And I even married to a patent attorney to cut down the cost. No, I'm kidding. I love my husband. But really, the legal part can cost you a lot. And I hope at least you will remember this later. If you are seriously considering to take one of your design into the market, you can file a provisional patent within 1 year from the first day of the exposure for the US. But you should file before any public disclosure to keep your patents right in the rest of the world. And next is looking for resources in product industry. Besides general networking events or on Thanksgiving Day of year of 2013, and I read about the Stanford Longevity Center Design Challenge, and I entered the competition and ended up taking the first place, and winning the inaugural design was definitely the highlight and the validation of the creative process. And it allows me to reach to a broader audience, and we were late that our products were recognized by professional caregivers and other prominent industry members. And the prize money for being the first place is $10,000. So after tax, there's only $6,300. So in my business plan, I also needed to get initial funding. So besides working for a guitar design company in San Francisco at that time, I made a simple product website, and I had a few friends help me to come up with product videos, and we took some hero shots for the products in the studio, and we redesigned a logo and making brochures and the postcards. And we ran a crowdfunding campaign. And to run a crowdfunding campaign, there's a lot of homework to do. I'm not going to talk too much about how to do it, since I can talk about it for another hour. And the industry also changed a lot since the first time I launched the campaign, but it did help us to get the initial funding and to start mass production processes, and it's obviously another milestone for the business, and I couldn't be more happy about it. And it helps us to redefine the target users. So eatwell was originally designed for people like my grandmother who have cognitive impairments and other dementias. However, our supporters started to buying the product sets for other conditions besides cognitive impairments. People with motor and visual impairments can also use eWell to maintain their ability to eat independently. And it is also great for children 1 to 3 years old to learn self-feeding skills. And it helps to find more potential partners to work with as well, because we receive hundreds of emails every day during that time. And we were first featured by Good Magazine, then CNN News, BuzzFeed, Fast Companies, and a few magazines. And it definitely helped us to gain publicity and more opportunity. And for that, we were invited to participate in a global entrepreneurial summit hosted by former President Obama in 2016. And it also helped us to expand to the global market stage as well. So after we received funding, I would like to share a few tips on mass production. Before I work on it, I have heard a lot from people mention that the mass production is a pain in the ass. And many people told me that production is hard, it's a whole other job. And the agent I signed a contract with was referred by a friend who he had been working together for a long, long time. And the agent was supposed to be a product manager who helps me to communicate better with his team running factories. So the first mistake I made is I overestimated the agent. I was told that the casting molds takes 45 days, then I will be able to receive my first testing models right after, and I don't have to do anything but wait. And I end up waiting 90 days, and these are what I got for the first meeting. I was totally shocked and furious because these are not my design. And they changed my design, cast the wrong molds, and decided to make 2 bolts and 2 different materials. How creative. And I learned a big lesson, and it took me 6 more months to deliver the final product. Therefore, I listed 3 tips for the beginners to start from. And first, I'll suggest a visit to the factory, because a visit can tell you a lot. Even if you have someone you can hire to do this for you, I'll still strongly recommend that you go by yourself, go with the person. How you can know easily, like how many people are there working in the factories, and what's the size of the factories, and what departments they have. And you can easily check their product lines and to see who are they working there. Are they cheap or young laborers, or they are experienced engineers? And is a factory clean and well organized? You can also check products they are making right at that moment. So once you visit, most of the manufacturers will have a showroom to show you those samples they made in the past. So I will not only check those, but also to see what they are making right at the moment and check it offline, so you can know the quality, you can check it by yourself, and before you started to work with them. And I'll also add a quick note here. The biggest is not always the best. Since the ideal situation, in my opinion, is you find a factory is the same as your size, your company, so you two can grow together. Since most of the bigger factories, they will also require a bigger volume, so you will feel much more stress. And apparently, if you are not giving that volume, and you will be their last priority. So second is to sign a good contract. I can't emphasize this more. And make sure you consult an experts. And the ideal contract will list all the important things to make sure both parties understand what their duties are. Basic things like volume, payment terms, and also includes who owns IP are basic. And don't forget to list the penalties part for late delivery as well. And since most factories are taking more cases than they should, you have to give them very clear time frame, and you let them know if they are late, what they should do. Maybe they can pay back the money, which is which kind of impossible. But maybe you can have some terms. For example, they will have to reduce the price for you next time, something like that. Then you will have some leverage. And along with the contract, there should also be an inspection standard to let the quality control people know what is acceptable. Because you are all designers, I believe you know what a product should look like, a good one, but they don't know, trust me. So you have to make a standard for them to write it down to let them know clearly. And third is to be around. I will make sure that I can be around, or a person you trust a lot can be around. After the first shock at my first meeting, I don't trust anyone anymore but myself. So the best way to work with manufacturers is you have to be around. Go check the progress when they told you they're working on your project, and you have to have someone literally be there, and you have to monitor that as they work, and if there's something wrong, you don't have to wait for 2 weeks to be notified, or you figure out yourself. So you can request to correct those problems right away. So after the product delivered, we started to sell, and there are some jobs between manufacturer and really deliver the products to your customers. But we're glad that we received very good feedbacks from the customers, and these are the reviews on Amazon. And Eatwell is honored to be one of the 25 best inventions of 2016 by Time Magazine. And you are also welcome to take a look at Eatwell after the class, or you can also see Eatwell in SF MoMA in Design in California exhibition in social impact category from now to this May. And after we share this information with our supporters on Facebook, this is one of the comments we receive. So basically, Eatwell have reached we really I'm very proud to have Eatwell to help so many people in need. And this is also our goal, to have older nursing homes to use Eatwell. And this is a website and a Facebook page. Thank you.
Well, we have lots of time for questions, and I'll start. Which was more difficult for you, coming up with the prototype or coming up with the mass-produced product? And by how much?
I'll say it depends on when. Because when I was a student, I feel like the design process, how to make a good product, is the most challenging part. So after that process, I thought my job is done. Then I realized in the product cycle, there are always more challenges waiting. And for the mass production part, I think it does require some experience. It definitely helps a lot. But there are some factors I can't control by myself. So I will say that part is harder.
I'd say from what you were presenting, you were able to design it yourself and come up with a prototype, and it was just you. But in order to make it a
product, you had to rely on all these other people in another country who weren't familiar with you or your design, really. And that part seemed to be really frustrating.
Yes. Yeah. And during that time, I know my supporters are waiting for the product, so that's all the stress are from.
Duncan has a
I
question.
have a question. So your original goal was for serving people with cognitive impairments, but obviously it has application to other areas. What percentage of sales would you say went to cognitive impairments so far?
I think we didn't really calculate that part, but we do realize that sometimes a person with dementia also comes with other impairments too. So, but I can tell at least more than half of our users are from the caregivers of people with dementias.
Yes. Did you speak the language at the factory? Do you think that made a difference?
Yes, definitely. But I can also tell, because I was born and raised in Taiwan, and the cultural background is actually slightly different, but maybe better than a U.S. person directly flying there to negotiate with them. But I do realize that it's very important to for people who want to work with them to find a proper language to talk to them. Not just the language, but you have to know how they react to what you say. For example, I have heard from many people that if you talk to the factory people, you have to be very straightforward and you have to be harsh and you have to scold them and you have to ask them to do this or that. But in my experience, it doesn't really work like that. You have to respect them a lot and do not to mention the money, actually. It's very strange, but it's true. So, because I do also receive many feedback from people, or they told me what to do, but it doesn't really apply to every case. Okay.
There were some material challenges in the process. You concerned about microwave. What material did you use?
Oh, we used the plastic PP material still, but instead of using the silicone, we used the TPE material, which is a soft touch plastic. It can be combined with PP very well. Yeah.
I think you're using primary colors there. It's very colorful, and I think it
Yes.
would be something that kids would like as well. Have you done any testing with kids to see if this glue fits their hand? And
Yes. After we deliver the product, we are lucky to have distributors in Taiwan who explore this area, who sells the baby and baby products, and they do the testing on the eval set, and they said it's the best to have the children 1 to 3 to use that the diningware sets to learn how to self-feeding.
Did they have to resize like the forks and spoons?
We thought we will have to, but actually it works well. Yeah, but they do mention that some other ideas they hope us can work on later for the children's product lines.
What kind of modeling did you first have when you were contracted on production? So your first batch of production, what volumes did you contract?
The very typical standard, I will say, if you are doing the injection molding, the minimum usually goes from 3,000 to 5. And it depends on the manufacturers, and if you have personal relationship, maybe it can be less. but it's very standard to start from 3,000, I'll say.
I'm sure your IP is not just a piece of paper that they're not making versions of here.
Oh, you mean the at the beginning, or?
Yeah, I mean, at the factory, it's design.
He's wondering if they could steal your design and make more and sell them locally.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. That's actually before I worked with my supplier, I didn't know if they will or not, but I tell them at their face and say, I have filed the patent, international, and not an international patent, but for mainland China, Taiwan, US, and Europe, and Japan. So it's something like we can really prevent if they really want to, since Apple also be copied by big factories. And think from the positive side, if your product got copied, it means your product sells very well.
So I think I understood correctly that your company is a US company that you contracted with a factory outside of the US. So what law do you use? Do you use contract governed by the US law? Or
Do I contract with?
you contracted a factory to make your product.
Yes.
You're an American company. The factory that you contracted is not in the US. It's not a US company. So what law governs that contract?
She wants to know if there's a tension between you're being an American company and making it in a foreign country as far as contracting legal issues.
It wasn't so much the brand attention, it's that you have to pick what jurisdiction your contract will have, and I wondered what jurisdiction you picked and how you come to those decisions.
It's based on many different things. I think the cost is also one of the major factor that I didn't choose to make it here. Does it answer your question?
I think she was asking how is it law abiding? Like, if you're an American company and you're going to have a company in China build this product, what kind of legal challenges are there to make sure that they follow through the contract?
Oh, the certifications.
The issue is if someone violates the contract, do you deal with it in US courts or do you deal with it in the country where the factory happens?
If a product have a problem or what?
No, if there's an issue, if they don't follow through on that contract, how would you resolve that in court?
Oh, that part is also a good question because apparently my first agent didn't really follow the contract and he screwed up and he got fired. And it's a good question because during that time I didn't really look for the legal solution to solve that problem because I think that will be pretty much time consuming and I don't guarantee what I can get. So during that time, why I spent 6 more months to deal with that is I sit down with older factory owners and I explained it to them, like I show them my supporters, like how much orders I got already, and I try to negotiate with them and see what they can do for me. And it does require some negotiation skills and what's the following benefit they may get if they help me to casting all the moves and to deal with that. Yeah.
Seems you wear many different hats, that of a designer, there's legal issues, issues, and international issues, and manufacturing issues. So you really have to know all this stuff, right?
Yes, I didn't know many of the things in the beginning, but I am sure if you were in my position, you also learn a lot, like from other people or from your experience.
It looked like there were around 20 or so different parts to the heat well set. Which one was the most difficult to design for when you were looking at what the users wanted out of your product?
When I'm working on my design, I didn't feel like the specific item is harder to make, but I do have my challenges knowing the feedbacks from my user directly, since all my users are people who have some sort of impairment, cognitive impairment especially, and it's harder for me to get the feedback directly from them, but instead I got much more feedback from the users, from the caregivers who are taking charge of them every day. So they know exactly what they need, and they will know even much better than themselves. Yeah.
When people buy the set, can they pick and choose which items to include, or are there like specific packages, or how does that work?
We now have 3 packages. It's 4 pieces in yellow set and 4 pieces in red. And this is the premium, this is the 8-piece. And we do have someone come to us and say they want to purchase one by one, because it's related to the buying pattern. So if the buyers are from the hospital, sometimes they're only focusing on, for example, they want the spoons only. They also want the spoon. So we will start to sell in separately this year.
Well, I think we have time that maybe you could open the box
Sure.
and have it on display, and students come out, take a look at it, and
Okay.
check it out. Okay. How much does this piece of sell for?
Now is 60 to 80, 98. 60 to 98.
$60 to $98 for that box. Okay. So, come on down, check it out.
Thank you.